All the major news stories made simple and easy for your listening pleasure. We'll break it down for you in keywords, and we're joined by Adam for the segment. Good morning.
Good morning, Lena.
Happy Wednesday to you.
Happy Wednesday. We're only halfway. Oh.
What do you mean? This is the last week of the year.
Oh, no.
What do you mean? Actually, that's agreeable. I think most people were unaware that it was quickly approaching.
You know what? Good riddance, 2021. Yeah.
On to the next.
On to the next.
On
Let's
to the
get
next.
it over and done with. It's been
A tough year.
It has been a tough year,
Yeah.
It hasn't been the best, has it?
You know what, but I don't know. Perseverance is probably a word I shouldn't throw around lightly. But we do acclimate, don't we? And we're trying to move forward with a little bit more strength and a slightest of optimism.
Hopefully.
All right. Let's jump into our keyword news, shall we?
Let's do.
We're going to start out with our COVID-19 coverage as always. This is our first keyword of the day.
Slowing cases.
So COVID-19 cases have been falling for a few days now locally, that is, with health officials carefully optimistic that this could be the start of a downward trend. So what's the latest, Adam?
Yes, carefully optimistic is the right word indeed. New cases dropped below 4,000 for the first time in nearly a month yesterday, partly due to these restrictions and, of course, fewer tests over the weekend. And we are at the midway point of the week. It is a hump day, so we'll have to see what the numbers will be like today and later this week as well. But for the moment, it seems like cases are slowing down slightly. Health officials say the number of newly confirmed cases is showing signs of slowdown, and it could be on a downward trend rather than a resurgence. Now, the number of people waiting for hospital beds is also decreasing as well, according to officials. So some good news there. From 1,000 to about 200, I think, was the latest figure. However, officials, as you say, are cautious on whether the current drop in cases is temporary, especially with the Omicron variant still spreading. Health authorities will soon begin using the recently developed PCR test to detect the Omicron variant, which will be able to do so in, say, 3 to 4 hours. Authorities will also review the pandemic situation during the year-end holidays as well and decide whether to extend the current social distancing measures further or to ease them. The current ones do end on January 2nd, and so I'll have to see whether they will continue. Now, the government will also introduce an upgraded vaccine pass system from January 3rd that will better identify those who are fully vaccinated and also those who are unvaccinated as well.
And that's also accounting for the booster shots now, right?
That's right. People cannot use vaccination certificates after 180 days since they received their second vaccine shot. The vaccination certificate for people who receive the second dose before July 6th will all expire at midnight on January 3rd. However, if they received a third shot, a booster shot, in the last 180 days, their certificate will remain valid. And the government has set the first week beginning January 3rd as a grace period. So for those who haven't got the booster shots, then it's basically the government telling them to get them as soon as possible.
There is a clear sense of urgency there because that's not a really long grace period, is it?
No, it's not.
All right. The government, I think, policies have also always pointed at the same direction: get vaccinated and get the booster shots.
Yeah.
All right. On to our second keyword of the day.
Record cases worldwide.
While things seem to be slowing down in Korea ever so slightly, the same can't be said for the rest of the world, which recorded an all-time high of confirmed daily COVID cases.
That's right. The daily number of new COVID infections reached 1.44 million on Monday, according to data from Johns Hopkins University. Now, this comes as, of course, the Omicron variant spreading, which is becoming the dominant strain quickly globally, continues its sweep across the globe. Now, the number of weekly cases was also on track to beat the current record of 5.79 million weekly infections. Now, the 7-day rolling average of COVID-19 cases, which is considered a more conservative gauge, is also at an all-time high as well. So even the most conservative reading is showing a bit of a bleak outlook. It has jumped 49% from last month and currently stands at 841,000. And of course, with these year-end festivities or holidays, not so much holidays anymore coming up, there's been a lot of flights that have been scrapped worldwide, 11,500 to be exact, since Friday. tens of thousands more have been delayed. And it is one of the year's busiest travel periods as well.
It seems to be a number of different elements, though, right? Not enough workers.
Right.
There are several different reasons why flights were grounded. But as you've said, I mean, because it is a season where people travel more to be reunited with their family members.
That's true.
I think it was a little discerning to see.
Yeah, and that shortage of staff as well is down to the virus as well. A lot of people coming in contact with confirmed patients or them being infected themselves as well. So it does tie in to this virus. Governments already are warning that infections and hospitalization may soar following the holiday as well into the new year. This is setting a kind of a grim tone as the world heads into the third year of the pandemic. Now, the silver lining is that daily COVID deaths haven't significantly increased. The 7-day rolling average of deaths has hovered at about 7,000 since mid-October. But then again, it's not really decreasing drastically either.
Right.
Now, the outlook heading into 2022 depends on whether the death toll follows cases and surges higher in the days to come, or if the Omicron wave proves mild or more real-world data emerges. Usually, the death toll does follow several weeks following a surge in cases. So we are in the midst of a global surge at the moment. So we'll have to see.
If fatality rate
changes. And early into next year as well to really gauge how bad the situation is.
All right. I think going into the new year, I think we're managing our expectations. I know last year around this time, the conversation was a little bit more hopeful, hoping that we'll get a clean slate. But that just turned out to be ineffective. So let's just ease into the new year.
Yes.
All right. On to our third keyword of the day.
Going green.
So Korea is pushing more policies to go carbon neutral and to becoming a manufacturing powerhouse on that grounds, that is. What's the latest?
Yeah, the Trade Ministry has set out goals to accelerate the goal of carbon neutrality, as well as becoming a global manufacturing powerhouse, as you said, and also to better manage supply chain issues. There's been a lot of supply chain issues, especially this year. With green initiatives, Korea's oldest coal power plant will be permanently shut down at midnight on December 31st. Once that power plant is decommissioned, the Moon administration will be able to keep its promise of turning off 10 coal power plants during its term. The ministry has also raised the country's renewable portfolio standard, or RPS for short, policy to 12.5% for 2022. Currently, Korean power producers with more than 500 megawatts of capacity were previously obligated to produce 9% of their output from renewable sources this year, with the expectation of reaching 10% in 2022. But the ministry is looking to increase that number and also to increase it every following year as well. Now, the government is setting 2022 to be the year when the eco-friendly drive will make its rapid, clear transition to a low-carbon society, in their words. The government says the digital economy and nurturing talented young workers to lead the green discussions will be the top policy priorities as well. It's all well and good having this infrastructure in place, but if you don't have the manpower to achieve that goal, then it's pretty much useless. About 88 billion won will be spent next year to support carbon neutral facilities built by SMEs. So there's going to be some incentives there. The government will also set up and enforce a law to increase tax incentives as well for firms with green business models. So basically encouraging them to be a bit more eco-friendly.
Because the cost of going green is monumental for even big businesses. So there needs to be government aid, and this is where it's coming with tax cuts.
That's exactly right, yes. The ministry has also decided to establish an external advisory body dedicated to enhancing the country's industrial security policies as well, and it hopes to tackle the issue of supply bottlenecks through this. This body will be comprised of public experts and government ministries and bodies and so on.
All right, and on to our fourth keyword this morning.
North Korean meeting.
So North Korea has kicked off a key party meeting to discuss and decide what they're calling major strategic and tactical policies for the incoming year. What do we know so far about the meeting?
Well, North Korean state media said participants would, quote, review the implementation of main party and state policies for 2021. It said the meeting also aims to discuss and decide on the strategic and tactical policies and practical tasks for dynamically guiding the struggle of the party and people to usher in a new period of the development of socialist construction to the next stage of victory. That was quite a mouthful, but that was the quote made by state media. All eyes are on the meeting as it does come at a critical juncture in terms of North Korea's political spectrum. This marks the 10th year of Kim Jong-un assuming the supreme commandership of the Korean People's Army.
So decade of Kim Jong-un in power. What do they have to show for it?
Yeah, so against this backdrop, Pyongyang expects to present a positive assessment of economic achievements, and state media has continued to praise this year as a victory, in fact. So it has been continuing to do so, and it was likely to do that in the new year as well. South Korea's unification ministry, meanwhile, pointed out North Korea would have to continue its impetus for the 5-year national economic plan by at least setting a higher goal in each field, taking note of the importance of the next year. The ministry also assessed that around 1,000 personnel attended this plenary session. That's similar to the plenary session that was held back in December 2019. Officials of factories and industrial establishments were also believed to be part of this meeting, which the ministry says could be intended to garner the on-the-ground opinions when evaluating this year's performance and drawing up policies related to that going into the new year.
All right, and turning our attention to our fifth keyword of the day.
9th largest donor.
And that's the aim. South Korea is set to become the 9th largest contributor to the UN's budget starting next year. Run us through what this actually entails.
Right, so the UN General Assembly approved the budget obligations for 193 member states last week. It set South Korea's share at 2.57% of the total funding for the 2022 to 2024 period. It's a very specific amount, isn't it?
Yeah.
That higher level, according to Seoul anyway, was in line with Korea's economic growth in the previous years, so it's factoring that in. UN budget obligations are based on a pretty complex formula that factors in gross national income and population as well. The United States and China, unsurprisingly, will still be the top two donors in the next 3 years.
Given their scale of the country.
Of course, right.
Their economic scale.
Yeah.
All right, on to our sixth keyword of the day.
Consumer sentiment worsens.
All right, this is a little bit of bad news for the Korean economy. Consumer sentiment dropping for the first time in 4 months. What does it actually stipulate?
Yeah, the composite consumer sentiment index came to 103.9 in December. That's down 3.7 points from the previous month. Reading above 100 actually means optimists outnumber pessimists. So generally speaking, there are still a lot of optimists out there, but just the index itself has dropped for the first time in 4 months. And as you mentioned, it was the first decline since August when the index fell to 102.5 from the prior month's 103.2. So it has been remaining in the above 100. Now, the decline came amid, of course, the resurgence of COVID and the spread of the Omicron variant as well and concerns over that. Meanwhile, the sub-index for people's assessment of current economic conditions came in at 79 in December. That's down from 81 in November. The index gauging people's outlook for future economic conditions also fell from 96 to 88. So on the whole, it seems that people are not so bright or not so bullish on the economy. Yeah.
All right. That's, I think, a changed perspective from last year. Again, there's a stark contrast. And I'm going to use one of the quotes used by Professor Yang Jin-seok on our program. I mean, you're familiar with him.
Yes.
And he said, don't you find it strange that, economists were making all of these predictions last year and this year a little bit mum. There's a reason why. We're a little bit more careful this year.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of expectations have been broken this year compared to the last. And I think, pandemic-wise and economically speaking, we should be very cautious on what we say going into the new year.
One day at a time.
Yes, one day at a time.
Thanks, Adam.
You're welcome.
I'll see you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
If you're listening to our program using the podcast service, just a reminder that we do go live Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. Korea Standard Time. So tune in and help us make the show more informative by giving us your input. See you bright and early on Good Morning Seoul.